Hello friends, I'm George, the nice smelling gentleman. Welcome back to the channel guys, I hope that all of you are doing well. Today I'm going to talk about two great alternatives, at least in my honest opinion, of two famous Parfum de Marly scents that both come from the brand of Fragrance World, at least technically, because one of them is sold under the brand of Fragrance World, the other one is sold under the sub-brand of French Avenue. The two fragrances that I'm going to feature in today's video are called Carlisle, which as you can probably guess is inspired by Carlisle, and the second one that comes from French Avenue is called Mirage Absolu, and this one is inspired by Parfum de Marly's Layton Exclusif. Before I go in depth about the two fragrances, I just wanted to mention something out in the beginning of the video, an interesting fact or some thoughts of mine about the two fragrances that I'm going to talk about today. I think they represent different stages of the evolution of the brand of Fragrance World. One of them, which is Carlisle, the first fragrance that I'm going to talk about in depth in today's video, is one of the older offerings from this brand. It feels and looks a bit tacky. The whole presentation just lacks the quality. And then when you look at the Mirage Absolu, which is sold under the brand of French Avenue, this looks way more luxurious, is way better presented, and all around I think it just shows the evolution of the brand itself and the shift towards the quality when it comes to the presentation and the whole feel of the fragrance itself. And now let's start talking a little bit more in depth about the fragrances themselves. The first one that I'm going to talk about will be Carlisle. The fragrance comes packaged in this black colored box with silver accents, and as you can see the packaging is somewhat similar to the original fragrance. You get a similar logo to the original scent from Parfums de Marly. The name has been copied straight up. The concentration here is EDP, the bottle size is 100 milliliters. You get some additional branding on the top and on the back, a sticker of authenticity. The production date here is an interesting fact as well, because this is quite an old bottle. Its production date is September of 2020, so it's an almost 4-year-old bottle. And also an interesting fact is that the whole box came wrapped up with this ribbon thing. And once you take out the actual bottle, this is how the bottle looks. It feels and looks kind of tacky and cheap. The cap is plastic, but it has metallic coating. It's not really a snug fit, and all around the whole presentation and the feel that you get out of it really represents the price point of this fragrance, which is pretty low, but I'll talk about that in a second. Some of the main notes that the Carlisle from Fragrance World, just like the original scent, heavily relies on are the notes of nutmeg, green apple. You get saffron, you get tonka bean, you get vanilla, there's some rose, you also get some patchouli, and there's a boozy note in this fragrance as well, just like the original has. I'll show you the sprayer in action. The sprayer is decent, not the best one in the world. I'll spray some on my hand as well. And now onto the scent of this fragrance. Now, Carlisle from Fragrance World opens up very, very boozy. There's a very strong alcohol note in the opening of this fragrance, and to me that's down to the actual alcohol note that's being used, but also down to the perfumer's alcohol that is used in every fragrance pretty much out there. It opens up very, very boozy. There's a hint of spiciness somewhere in the background. It also opens up quite sweet, and there's a very strong, at least to my nose, a strong green apple note that adds a bit of fruitiness and a bit of sweetness to the whole scent of this fragrance. It's boozy, it's strong, it's fruity, it's sweet, and it's spicy in the opening. The more this goes into the dry down, you start to lose some of that strong boozy vibe out of this fragrance. On the dry down, it becomes a little bit greener, it becomes sweeter, the patchouli note starts to become quite prominent on the dry down, and all around this is a very sort of rich, very dense fragrance, just like the original one is. It's pretty nicely blended. I've been enjoying Carlisle. The only problem that I have with this fragrance is that very strong alcohol blast that you get in the opening. When it comes to how close this fragrance is to the original scent, I would say that Fragrance World have done a nice job with the scent itself. The only main difference here is the fact that this has a way stronger alcohol note in the opening. On the dry down, it actually becomes quite similar to the original scent. All around, actually, in the air smells very similar to Carlisle from Parfums de Marly. Moving on to the performance, Carlisle from Fragrance World actually turned out to be a very strong fragrance. It's quite long lasting. I've been getting around about 9 hours of performance out of this fragrance, maybe even over 9 hours, and also very loud projection. Probably it's down to that very strong alcohol opening, but the first 2 to even 3 hours this fragrance actually pushes out and radiates really strong. So it's a strong projecting fragrance. So all around it's a very strong performing scent. Price wise, pretty cheap. I paid about 20, 21, 22 euros. At that price point it costs a fraction of the price of the original fragrance. And versatility wise, this usually is marketed as a unisex fragrance, but to my nose this leans heavily into the masculine side, and it's definitely a cold weather scent and definitely a nighttime fragrance. And before I talk about Mirage Absolu, I just wanted to mention a few things about Carlisle, a few extra things about Carlisle. You also get quite a strong rose note with this fragrance, and there's a bit of tobacco on the dry down of this one as well. And now moving on to Mirage Absolu from French Avenue. Now this, as I said, really in my opinion shows the evolution of a fragrance world as a brand, because Mirage Absolu costs way more compared to Carlisle, but also comes way better packaged, way more luxurious and way more impressive. And you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the box that the fragrance comes packaged in. Again, on the front you got the name of the fragrance, the name of the brand, French Avenue. It's actually Mirage is a line of 2 fragrances. On the back you get some additional information. On the bottom there's a production date which reads May of 2024, and in order to get to the bottle itself you need to open up the box like this. As you can see, this is way better and more impressive packaging. Once you do that, you take out the bottle. This is how the bottle looks. It feels and looks and feels way more pricey, way more upscale compared to the other fragrance. The cap is plastic, but it's a secure click, and all around again the packaging of Mirage Absolu is just way better compared to to Carlisle. Some of the notes that Mirage Absolu relies on, just like the original fragrance from Parfums de Marly, Layton Exclusif, are the green apple note. You get some citruses, you get an almond note in here, you get some gaiac oud, maybe some agar oud as well. There's vanilla and ambery sweetness. There's a rose note in here. There's some sandalwood. All around this feels very similar to the original fragrance, but I'll talk about that in a second. I'll show you the sprayer in action. The sprayer is pretty decent. A little bit on the weak side when it comes to the amount of fragrance that it sprays, but at least it's a very nice distribution. And now onto the scent itself. Basically, if you have ever smelled Layton, even if you have not smelled Layton Exclusif, and you spray Mirage Absolu, you'll immediately pick up that famous Layton DNA. I get the green apple note in the opening. There's a hint of that almond note that just adds a bit of bitterness to the whole scent profile. There's quite a bit of sweetness right away from the vanilla note. Also, I pick up quite a strong rose note out of this fragrance, and it feels woody, down to that gaiac oud. Maybe there's an agar oud note in here as well. It feels quite woody. It's like a darker take on the original DNA of Layton, just like Layton Exclusif does it. On the dry down, this becomes more woody, becomes a little bit sweeter, but still the rose note is quite prominent. And all around, this is a very niche type of scent. It just takes the Layton DNA, which a lot of people tend to call more like a designer style of fragrances, and just adds a bit of niche twist to the whole scent profile. The quality here is pretty good, and it's nicely blended, and I've been really impressed with Mirage Absolu. But just want to mention something out. When I first tried this fragrance 4 or 5 weeks ago, I wasn't very impressed by the opening. The opening felt a bit sharp, it felt a bit green, and it was a bit all around the place, but like 4 or 5 weeks of maceration have really helped with the scent itself, and now it's nicely settled and feels way better blended. When it comes to how close this fragrance is to the original scent, I would say they've done a really good job with copying the original scent. Maybe lacks a bit of the intensity of the original scent, and also I pick up a stronger rose note here compared to Layton Exclusif, but in the air this smells pretty much identical to the original fragrance. Performance wise, it's a good performer. It's not a beast mode scent, but still I'll be getting about 8 to 9 hours of performance out of it, with moderate projection in the first about 2 hours. Price wise, this is way more expensive compared to the other scent. I paid about 45 euros, so it's about double the price of Carlisle. So it's a bit more expensive than your average cologne fragrance, but comes nicely packaged, and overall it's done really nicely. And versatility wise, this is another fragrance that's marketed as unisex, but in my opinion leans to the masculine side, and again definitely more of a cold weather scent, and definitely more of a nighttime scent. And at the end, a few final words about the two fragrances featured in today's video, Carlisle and Miraj Absolu. When it comes to Carlisle, this was actually quite a pleasant surprise for me, because this was really cheap, and this is one of the older fragrances from the brand of Fragrance World, and I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the scent and by the performance. Now maybe the performance is so strong because this is an old bottle, almost a 4-year-old bottle, so at this point the fragrance has macerated enough in order to reach its full potential. I don't know what's the reason, but this is a really strong fragrance, especially when it comes to projection. If I have to point one thing out, or two things actually, that I don't like, the first one is that they straight up copied the name itself, something that I don't really like at all. And the other thing will be that the opening can be really harsh for some people because it has a very strong alcohol blast in the first few minutes. But other than that, this is surprisingly good considering how cheap it actually is, and the amount of money that I paid for it. When it comes to Miraj Absolu, again, as I said a few times already in the video, this really shows the evolution of the brand itself. This is way more luxurious, just feels better packaged, better presented. The whole bottle feels of higher quality, and the scent itself feels of a better quality. I think there are better oils, Fragrance World have used better oils in here. This is closer to the original fragrance compared to Carlisle. It's a good performer, and all around I think this is a really nicely done fragrance from the brand of Fragrance World. And so guys, in today's video I showed you what in my opinion are two great alternatives to Parfum de Marly scents from Fragrance World, Carlisle and Miraj Absolu. I hope that you found this video interesting. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.